Hello, YouTube subscribers, Patreon patrons, fans, followers, supporters, and generally anyone who happens to stumble across this video. Making this video today because it was requested that I videotape my drawing process, and I said I would do a video of how I draw some of my auctions. And to be honest, I've just been kind of dreading making this video, mostly because of the whole performance anxiety. Yeah, I frankly I don't know what to draw on this video because like when I do auctions, I just kind of like just wing it out the top of my head, but then having to just do it as somewhat of a performance art and record it, it's just kind of just putting me on edge just because like I said, performance anxiety. But anyway, think I'm just gonna whip out several sketches, and later maybe I'll do a video on me tightening those sketches up. But right now, let's see. I honestly don't know what to draw. Well, I guess I'll just do some poses, various poses, and then I'll figure out what character to put in there later. And right now I'm just kind of preparing this piece to be drawn as a Sonic fan art auction. Well, not like Sonic, but like a Sonic character. And recently I've had like a lot of requests to do more Cream the Rabbit art, and also had like another request to do more artwork of what's that character's name? Styx the Badger. And I'm not too hip on Sonic, the whole Sonic worlds. Like last I left the Sonic realm was well, shoot, which Sonic game was it? It was like Sonic Battle Chaos 2 or something. I can't remember. It was but it was on the GameCube, and it was one of the 3D games released back in the early to mid 2000s. And I think that's when they introduced Knuckles. No, not Knuckles. Shadow the Hedgehog. So I'm not too hip on like a lot of these characters that I'm just not very familiar with. Like, I guess Styx the Badger comes from the animated show, the CG animated show Sonic Boom. I believe that's the name of it. I don't know. I haven't really even bothered to look it up, but when I was compiling reference to draw Styx the Badger on an earlier piece, I believe the only reference I was able to gather was from that TV show. So I don't know if that character appears in a previous video game or if she was just created specifically for that show, just as Sally Acorn was created for the um, animated TV show way back in the 90s. I don't know if she like was created for the TV show or is like a part of the character set for the Sonic comic books. So as you can tell, I'm not very hip on my Sonic Sonic trivia, but um, I enjoy drawing several of the characters just because they're just so, I guess, basic in shape and form, and some of their characteristics are just so easy to remember. But I guess for this piece, like it'll be either Cream the Rabbit or Sticks the Badger, like, depending on which character I think best fits this pose here. And since it's still summer, like probably going to continue with the whole like bikini theme that I've been cranking out as of late. So this is somewhat of like a from the from the rear type, looking up from behind the character, and she'll be wearing a two-piece bikini of some design, and she'll be looking backwards, either with a surprised look on her face or just somewhat of a teasing expression. But I'll probably like cover that later in subsequent videos. But as far as a basic sketch goes, like I think this will be good enough for one of the drawings. And I usually just like crank these out in I guess sets of 5. I've been lacking like the last couple of weeks just because I've just been trying to focus more on commissions and getting those out of the way. And next month will be the last month for Patreon commissions, simply because I want to focus more on like some of the animation projects that I want to start tackling. Not only like with the sexy animated loops, but just personal animated projects that I've been just wanting to like start releasing. And I can only do that if I allocate more time to those projects. So sadly, next month will be the last month for Patreon commissions for a while, and I'm hoping that through the animations that I plan to release, like that, I'll start bringing in a little more like fan support and followers. And commissions were pretty fine to begin with, just because it was when I first got out of prison. It was like really hard to just try to get my name back out there again, especially since I'm being restricted from viewing or drawing any pornographic image whatsoever. And it's like still a scenario which these are restrictions that I'm still attempting to appeal. And I don't have any like solid evidence to back up um, my feelings on what exactly is going on with that process, but I feel that the courts and the judicial system itself is finding it very difficult to continue to justify their overbearing restrictions, rules, and guidelines pertaining to sex offenders. So I think for the most part, like a lot of these rules and regulations are starting to become a little more lax, but at the same time, they're not being forthcoming with that information. But somehow, personally, I feel that like a lot of these rules and regulations are starting to slip to the wayside because they themselves realize that they just can't keep enforcing these over regulations. Not only because it just more or less forces me to live as a secondary class citizen, but it also requires a lot of time, money, and manpower in order to enforce all these rules and regulations. But I think when they enacted a lot of these policies, they weren't um, there wasn't a lot of forethought or planning, like thinking like how they were going to go about like regulating all these rules and guidelines. Like sure, it sounds good on paper, but on practice, it's very impractical. And the whole aspect of just forcing me to live as a secondary class citizen, even though they say that it's not punishment, that it's just part of the whole rehabilitation process. When you look at the whole actuality of everything that's going on, it is just a form of punishment, forcing me to live as a secondary class citizen and restricting me a lot of these rights and liberties. And I'm still, I still got, I think I'll make a few videos just outlining a whole lot of those constitutional violations that they're just forcing me to live by. And I think it's very unruly that I don't want to live by a lot of these like overbearing rules. Like some of you understand that I've talked about this before. Just I don't know if I've been able to like clarify, but I think I'll clarify in other videos. Just but the whole aspect of negating me the access to pornography and negating me the ability to draw pornographic material is just a blatant violation of my First Amendment rights. Because first off, by negating me access to pornography that I can just purchase off the newsstand or whatever is a violation of my First Amendment rights, because it's like infringing on my ability to my access to protected free speech material located in that pornography newsstand pornography. And by restricting me the ability to draw pornographic images, again, that's just violating my First Amendment rights to the freedom of expression of art. And I'm trying to abide by all these rules, and it's just like just so overbearing and cumbersome, and it's just ridiculous. And not only that, it's like going beyond that, they're restricting me access to like my family, and my family's just very distraught about that situation, because not only because they feel that it's not me that's just getting punished for this. It's like my family's feeling that punishment because they feel that they shouldn't be restricted access to me, and vice versa. Because yeah, my family wants to come out here, but I do have younger siblings and nieces and nephews, and it's like my my immediate family can't come out here because they do want to bring my younger siblings or nieces and nephews, but they're just negated that, and it's not like they can themselves come out here just to visit me on their own, because that requires that they have to like find a babysitter or a caretaker to watch after the young ones. But like let's face it, like I come from a very low income family, and my family lives on the reservation, and there's like not quite like a service that's readily available for them to just like leave the young ones behind. And like extended family, leaving them with extended family, it's like my extended family also has like their own lives and businesses to or jobs to just attend to, and their own children as well. So like just wanting to come out here and visit me is not only like time consuming and money consuming, but it's just a hassle to just prearrange a whole lot of these factors just to like appease the courts, and they feel that it's not fair to do so. And well, here's another sketch that was completed. And not only that, it's like I'm getting set up to take a polygraph test in September, and by all rights, it's like polygraph polygraph tests aren't admissible in court, and therefore they shouldn't be admissible to any degree in just verifying the, I guess, of myself just abiding by all these rules, because that's what the polygraph test is for. is to make sure that I'm abiding by all these rules. I haven't come in contact with any minors, and just um, just basing that totality or the finality of like whether or not I'm abiding by the rules just on a polygraph test is just so um, it's ridiculous, because polygraph tests in themselves have been proven to not be reliable in a court of law, and therefore they're not admissible in court for or against you. So that being the case, they shouldn't be allowed in any like court ruling whatsoever, especially if they want you to take constant or um, scheduled polygraph tests to see that you're abiding by these rules. And I've read in articles that drug offenders don't even have to take them anymore because, again, it was ruled inadmissible as evidence in court, but yet they still feel it's necessary for sex offenders to take it. And the only argument posed to allow that is that they say that it inspires sex offenders to tell the truth. But there is no factual basis whatsoever to state like, oh, well, it it it's definitive proof that they aren't like telling the truth or not, because really it doesn't do any of that at all. And all it is just the only reason they allow is just based on this erroneous supposition that they believe that it inspires truth telling. But all in all, it's like even if you get like a false result from a polygraph test, they still punish you for it, which is ridiculous. Uh, well, I think I'm talking too much about this, but I do really feel passionate about like all the just the constitutional violations that just entail like a whole lot of my restrictions. And another thing against the polygraph test is that it's also a violation of the Fifth Amendment, because like if they utilize that against you, it's like you can't be called to testify against yourself in a court of law, and by like forcing you to take polygraph tests, they're doing just that. It's like they're forcing you to testify against yourself. And in a lot of cases that I've heard, it's like even a false reading is utilized negatively against the person who had the false reading. And the thing is like polygraph tests aren't a definitive yes or no on like truth telling. It's all just a matter of like reading vitals and fluctuations of the human body. And all those readings are up to a test reader for interpretation. So if it's all up to interpretation, it's all subjective, and there is no definitive proof whether it is right or wrong, because it's all just there are just too many variables that go into it. And it's just ridiculous that it's one of the things that I have to abide by in order to, keep my freedom. And it's just outright wrong. And I don't even know what I was trying to sketch here, because I'm just like um, going off on this rant. So I guess this is like a sketching rant video. I don't know. I'm not. I don't know if like too many people are interested, but I'm pretty sure there are a few people who are interested in hearing the plight that I have to go through, and it's very degrading and depressing on like just so many levels. It's like even though I'm free, I'm not quite free, and like I said before, it's like I'm being forced to live this pseudo freedom. And there are just so many things about my life that are just regulated and just things that I'm not allowed to do anymore. And one of those things that just really bugs me is just the fact that I can't draw what I want to draw. And it's just ridiculous, because the courts are just going too far with what they believe is right or wrong based on no factual evidence whatsoever. And in a lot of the cases of this nature, it's like the only victim is the court's sensibilities. And that's that's the God honest truth. Is that it's like they feel grossed out by you, and they feel that they're doing you some sort of weird favor by sending you to prison, forcing you to go through treatment, even though prison and treatment that they offer just does little to no effect. And I hear so many stories that like offenders just either choose to commit suicide or to reoffend just because it's just too hard to live under all these rules and regulations. And believe me, like I on a weekly basis, I think about drawing all the obscene porn that I used to draw again and just like releasing that and just fucking send me back to prison, because in prison I was free to draw whatever pornography that I wanted, because in prison they don't really care about that shit, because they're more concerned about drugs and other forms of contraband such as weapons and things of that nature. And if I'm drawing porn for other inmates, it's like more or less just a slap on the wrist or something. And the only way to stop me from drawing such material is to hold me indefinitely in a segregated unit, which is monstrously unconstitutional. And they've ruled it like that they can't do that for like an extended amount of time. It has to be like a certain amount of time that they keep me in, but then they're not just going to throw me in the shoe over just a matter of drawings. Oh, sorry. Shoe is like a prison term, um, SHU, which is short for Special Housing Unit, for those who aren't hip to the prison lingo. But that's the truth. And like if I just got sick of just trying to support myself with these, like with my art, as tame as it is, I could just start drawing the obscene lolicon that I was drawing before, get thrown back in prison, and just be free to draw whatever the frick I wanted to draw. And it's just weird how that's set up. It's like you send me to prison for drawing obscene drawings, but in prison I'm just free to draw all these obscene drawings as much as I want, which I did. And believe me, like in each prison that I went to, like I had left like a small cache of just obscene drawings with like a small amount of prisoners, and by now I'd say that those drawings are just kind of just dispersed throughout the federal prison system. And you know what? I do it again, because there's no harm that comes from drawings. As much as the courts tried to argue against that, it's the truth. And what they try to argue, like I've covered this in a previous video before, is that like by me drawing, that shows some sort of intent. And like it's ridiculous that people are charged with intent. And I think that's an argument that's starting to die out now, especially after the whole Johnson's versus U.S. case. It's like you can't charge someone like and send someone to prison just based on intent alone, because intent is something that's not measurable. It's not a tangible thing that can be measured and weighed against an individual. I mean, if you're charging someone with intent, it's like the courts have been charging people with the potential of doing harm, the potential of doing crime. But you look at anybody out in the world, anyone has the potential to cause harm or commit crime, but it's just wrong to charge people on that, because what that is a preemptive incarceration for a crime not committed, and that is just monstrously unconstitutional on its face. But yet, by the legalese and the way they word things, they've been able to get away with that for several years now. But due to some of the recent court cases, you can't charge someone based on intent or the potential to cause harm alone. And a lot of these baseless suppositions that they come up with in court are just they're no reason to like charge someone with a crime that they may have or might commit in the future, because it's ridiculous. I I'm sorry, I didn't mean for this this sketching video to turn into some sort of like weird political rant against the judicial system, but it's just something I really feel passionate about, and I think I should make like other videos to just be dedicated toward that. And those are some of the videos that I want to make. It's like I understand that animated videos are just a pretty big thing now. Like before going to prison, that's something that I wanted to dabble in. But then after coming out, it's like I see this explosion of just like animators just making all these videos, and it's just so impressive. And it's just like, man, I wish I could have jumped on that when I had the chance, because maybe I might have been able to get more support than I have now. But right now, it's like I just want to focus on just making some of these animations, and also like make some like PSA animated videos, just like talking about the whole the unconstitutionality of like a lot of these court processes that they're getting away with. Because like one of the things that really bugs me is that the court claims one thing against you, and then with a quick matter of wording that they place that burden of proof on you when they didn't need to prove their accusation in the first place. It's like, oh, well, we think you're guilty of this. Prove that you're not. It's like, well, you didn't have proof in order to accuse me in the first place. So, like, why is the burden of proof on me to prove my innocence? And that's one of the things that's wrong and crooked with the judicial system nowadays, is that when this country like founded its like whole like judicial process or whatever, like the as the old saying goes, is like you're innocent until proven guilty. But nowadays that's just not the case. Even though they still say that, you're treated as guilty until you're expected to prove your innocence. A case in point is that once you're like suspected of committing a crime, they hold you in some form of confinement. So like if you're like if they think you might have committed a crime, they hold you in like a temporary like a detention center. And even though it's like it's still a prison, they still call it like some form of confinement, and like they have a way of just arguing that you're not guilty yet. But even though they say that you're not guilty, it's like they're still holding you in prison, and that's just ridiculous beyond belief. I mean, if you have a history of like running from the law, or just not showing up for like court deadlines or court appointments, then maybe they might have grounds to hold you in confinement. And I say might because even in those cases, I think holding you in a form of confinement is still just outlandish. And that's just something that really needs to be reworked and um, just rebuilt from the ground up, because it's strayed way far off of what it was supposed to be, this whole judicial system and the whole judicial process. And like one of the telling tales of that is that the conviction rate is like in the high 90%. And when you look at that, like there's inherently something wrong with it. You may think that, oh yeah, like, well, the good guys are winning, right? Like the good guys are putting bad guys away. But no, that's really not the case. If you dig deeper underneath the layers, it's like a whole lot of their convictions are attained through guilty pleas. And the way they do that is just a whole lot of prosecutorial coercion. And how a lot of that is accomplished is just because like some of these very petty crimes, such as the crime that I was found guilty, or I pled guilty to, is the possession of child pornography. And the max penalty for that is 20 years in prison. And when you get to the actual offense, like I pulled the paperwork out before, but it's like this goes along with different forms of the crime, just possession, receipt, or distribution, and I think that's about it. Like, other than production, like just possession, receipt, or distribution, they all entail like a whole effect of interstate or foreign commerce. Now, what that entails is that you would have had to have traded like either some financial monies or a trade of value for your possession or receipt or distribution of said child pornography. But in many of these cases, like just countrywide, like there was no financial transaction of any sort. Now, like one of the arguments I stated before is that they try to argue that, oh, well, you utilized a computer which was manufactured overseas, or its components were manufactured overseas. That affects interstate or foreign commerce. But that is just a very overreaching conclusion, because like the computer, after it's purchased, is just like you're not affecting, well, you're affecting interstate or foreign commerce with the of the computer market by purchasing a computer, but the subsequent download, receipt, or distribution digitally of any child pornography, like after the fact, doesn't affect commerce in the least, especially if that imagery was attained at no cost whatsoever. So, like, if there was no direct transaction for this illegal imagery, there is no effective interstate or foreign commerce, and that's just the bottom line. And like another argument that I hear that keeps getting posed is that the assumption is that that you create a demand by coming in to possess, access these images. But that's just a groundless supposition, because just by coming in contact with these images, you don't spur a demand for more child abuse, and there is no relevant data or actual proof that the courts can point to. It's just, like I said, a baseless supposition. And just to state that is just a far overgeneralization of like any of these cases, and that itself is also unconstitutional, because each case is supposed to be viewed on a case-by-case scenario. Like each case is supposed to be viewed as like individually as possible, and to just state just just a broad sweep statement like stating that by accessing this material that you spur like a demand for the same, and that's just neither here nor there, because I'm just going to say that like the pederasts that release this content, I do believe that they would release this content, and like whether or not there was demand. Because let's face it, like pedophilia and pederasts have been around like way before like a so-called market was ever, I guess, assumed, or if it ever existed, that before that was even formed. And to assume that to make that assumption that by coming in contact with the imagery, like that somehow creates a demand, and that still alludes to like some sort of market that the courts are assuming that you engaged in. But again, there was no financial transaction or trade of value for any of these images in a majority of these cases. And let's see, there was another point I wanted to make. Ah, shoot. I just had another brain fart. Let's see. Where was I going with that? I had it in my head just a little while ago. Okay, the markets, they assume like, oh, the demand like leads back to like a whole like assumption that you participated in a market, like the whole supply and demand thing. But again, like if there was no financial transaction, then there is no market, and with no market, there is no like the spurring on of demand. Like if you didn't come in contact with this material and reach out to the producer of said material and specifically request that they make more, then there is no real demand that was imparted, or uh, no demand that had been taken action. So really, there is no cause or effect relationship here. All it is that the courts are arguing just based on supposition, and all that is just conjecture without proof, which is just heinous that the courts continue to get away with this. And I think the reason they do is just the whole shame and stigma associated with this offense. So a lot of people, like me included, just we 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 buckled, we folded, and just we agreed to sign that plea agreement, not knowing what exactly we're signing to. Is like, yes, a lot of us had come in contact with child pornography, and but when signing that agreement, we also agreed to the guilt that we somehow exchanged like a massive amount of money for the receipts or distribution of said pornography, which was neither here nor there. But through prosecutorial coercion, just like hanging that 20 years over your head and just threatening to like get your family involved and shame you through like the news media outlets and whatever, it's like they just strong arm you into signing this plea agreement, which really, when you look at the whole factual basis and the actuality of the offense, they have no grounds to force that on you. And I wish I could have like done more research and thinking on the whole thing before signing my plea agreement, but at the time, like I was just a friggin' just a drunkard. I was I was an alcoholic loser, is what I was. Now, I feel like I've already okay. I kind of already drew this pose. Maybe, yeah. It's like, as you can see, like I kind of already drew like somewhat of a seating pose, so wasn't quite sure what to do with the arms, but maybe I'll just kind of like put them behind the head. So like with these 4 sketches that I've done, like maybe I'll do like a few of like a couple like Cream the Rabbit, and then a couple more for Sticks the Badger. Now these are just like really rough, loose sketches, and I'll make another video just going over, excuse me, going over my process of like just detailing a bit more. Here's an old sketch that I hadn't used. I can't remember what this was going to be for. If I remember correctly, I think this was going to be Gwen Tennyson. I was going to do like a swimsuit cheesecake image, but didn't get around to finishing it. Just because, like I said earlier, I've just been working on a whole lot of these commissions, just trying to get these commissions done. But I'm wondering if I should use this as a 5th one, or if I should just... No, you know what? I'm not going to be lazy. I'm going to draw another one. Okay, 5th one. 5th one, who should this be? Well, you know what? Like, maybe I'll do like a Rouge the Bat piece, or maybe one of my own personal characters. Like I have a few OCs that I created recently, and I think there was a request to do more of one of my OCs, and I think that would have been Rhonda the Raccoon. So I'm going to go ahead and do a Rhonda the Raccoon piece, and I don't know what pose to put her in. I'm trying to remember what poses I've already done her in. I think I've done a back piece of her behind I'm not sure if I've done. Maybe I'll do one with her lying down. I don't know. Oh shoot. I'll just start throwing down some lines and see what comes out. How's that? Just do somewhat of a generic pose. Now, her being a raccoon, she's got like a pretty thick tail, so I'll throw that in there. Yeah, I think I'll just do a generic one just to get it out there. Now, for those of you who know my OCs, Rhonda, Trixie, and oh shoot, I can't remember the rest of them. I'm bad at remembering names, even when they're characters that I myself made. But for those of you who know my furry OCs, you know that they're pretty well endowed. To use another form of vernacular, they're stacked. So I hope this sketch isn't too light for you to not see that. Yeah, I think it kind of comes across. So there we go. Well, those are my 5 sketches for future furry art pieces. I know I'm behind schedule. I didn't do like a set last week because I've been working through auctions and I'm late in submitting a set this week just because, you know, I've been dabbling in some of the other animation projects that I wanted to work on. As some of you might have seen, I created another Sexy Rouge animated loop with her wearing a slingshot bikini, and that seems to be doing pretty well so far. And I also started working on another, well, like not started, but continued working on another like flash animation for my YouTube channel. And it's a pretty ambitious project. So ambitious, in fact, that I almost scrapped it and started working on a second one. In fact, I did start working on a second one, but like working on that one's like, you know what? Just scrapping that first one just seems so cheesy. The second one just so isn't up to par. Let me just double down and just buckle under and just fucking start cranking on that first animated Flash video. So I'm back on track with that again, and it's looking pretty well. It's looking pretty good so far. But again, like I'm not even to the difficult part yet. Oh my god, why do I do this to myself? Uh, Somebody help me, please. I need an in-betweener. Maybe in the future when I start making more money off my animations and drawings, I can I can delegate some in-between work to some animators out there. But as of right now, I'm not that much of a well-known animator yet. Sure, I got my credit on IMDb on a video game, but you know what? That's just so long ago that if I'm not producing more content, you know, on a more frequent basis, you know, like what good am I as an animator? So I got to start working on a lot of animations, and I just really want to make this happen. Like, yeah, I want to get back to my freedom of just drawing whatever I want to draw, but also like one of my lifelong goals is be just making my own animation studio. So in making some of these flash animations for my YouTube channel, like I'm hoping that it brings me a step closer to accomplishing that goal. But yeah, I'm also hoping like by creating some of these animations, like spur on more support and Patreon patrons and fundraising that I can continue making these animations. And like I said, I want to make informative animated videos to just talk about like a lot of the injustice that's going on. And I've noticed that like putting things in an animated format like makes it pretty palatable in a sense. Uh, just being able to absorb that information and data in a very um, just what's the word I'm looking for? Um, just a reasonable sized portion of information in like a nice little neat cartoony package. I've noticed that it's just easier to retain that knowledge when you see it like illustrated. Like if I could talk to a video, like I could talk into a camera more or less maybe all day and just talk about these issues. And I've done that a few times in some of my previous videos, just talking about like the injustices that I'm having to go through, like some of the unconstitutional factors that I bring up. But I think if I were to put it in an illustrated format or an animated format, like that would reach a bigger audience and just make them more aware. Just like I said, like making these public service announcements in an animated format, and just it's in making information available in that medium. It makes the information a lot more palatable, or just it helps you retain that information more, because just seeing a whole bunch of information either like written on a page that you'd have to read word after word, or just in a speech, like you only retain so much before your mind becomes pretty bored. And let's face it, like the people nowadays like their information in somewhat of uh, like an entertaining format. So if I can entertain people and educate them at the same time, I think that would just help all of us all around, and not only help out my situation, but help other people who are suffering in my situation as well. Just reworking these laws, and not only that, it would negate the future possibility of other people who are completely innocent right now, but who are at risk of coming under attack from the U.S. government due to these overbearing laws. And yeah, I just want to. That's one of the things I want to achieve through like whatever it is I'm doing now. And I do have the time and everything. That's just like it's just kind of hard finding that motivation sometimes, because it's like do I make this animation content now, or do I like make sure that I have enough artwork to release next week so I can continue to feed myself? It's a somewhat of a vicious circle, but I think I'm getting to the point where I can like be self-sufficient with my artwork and the stuff I produce. So like I said earlier, like I'm getting closer to becoming self-sufficient thanks to like my Patreon patrons. Like you guys are awesome. And like my YouTube subscribers, like though I don't have like enough in order to make YouTube like a viable career choice. Like I'm pretty far from that, but like if I could reach that goal, that would be great. But as of right now, like Patreon is just like the patrons there, just like you guys are my bread and butter, and like you guys are awesome, and I can't thank you enough. And I'm hoping that you can continue to assist me on this journey, this travel that I'm going through, to just make entertaining artwork, informative animations, and make a better future for all of us. Because as of right now, like yeah, like things suck pretty badly. Like I'm having to go through it, and like looking at the situation, I'm in a spot where I'm like on the outside looking in, because I've been taken out of the system and thrown in prison. And when you're in that situation, you're able to see things for what they really are. In a sense, it's like you become disillusioned, you become dispelled, and when that happens, you're able to see like the I guess the machinery behind the curtain, and when you see that, you kind of understand how grim things really are, in a sense. And I'm hoping that people won't have to go through what I went through in order to wake up to that fact. So I want to fix things in a way that we can enjoy like true freedom and liberty, just as it was meant to be from the beginning, in a sense. Like all men are created equal, and you should have the freedom to pursue like life, liberty, just and well, the pursuit of happiness and everything, just so long as your freedom and liberties don't encroach on somebody else's. So, like, whatever you do, like using my artwork as an example, like the Lolicon artwork I produce as Natus_01, using that as an example, just as long as it's not hurting anybody, like I should be free to create whatever obscene artwork that I want, because that should be my freedom as an American. You know, like obscenity is something that shouldn't be regulated if it's victimless obscenity. And sadly, like a lot of these overbearing laws and rules and regulations are just going out of control, like especially in our time. And I've said it before and I'll say it again, is that America as a whole, American society as a whole, right now, we are so inundated with so many laws that everyone in society is either a felon or a potential felon. That's it. You're just one of those two. And if you're a potential felon, all it takes is just like a air of suspicion, or you get caught up in just a random case, and then they do a little searching into your life history or backstory, and they can find any sort of like thing to just nail you on. And it shouldn't be like that. And I do have my ideas and theory on like what is really going on with that. And like this is a topic that's been like discussed in other documentaries before. It's just like slavery, like slavery never ended. Let's face that fact, is that slavery didn't end, it just shifted forms, it shifted faces. and and the prison system is like one of those faces. And what it is like a capitalism at its worst. Like I do believe in capitalism, that an individual should be able to profit off their own hard work and labor. But then what these government people and officials did is just by shifting the face of slavery and putting like a different label on it, they're in fact capitalizing on human lives, just using people as cattle, if you can understand what I'm saying. And by capitalizing on human lives and people themselves, it's like that's capitalism at its most evil form. And like capitalism can be good, and like any form of government, I believe, can be utilized for as a form of good. But when you have corrupt people in power, they'll twist that and manipulate it in a way that profits them. And one of those ways is one of the ways capitalism was twisted and manipulated was through the prison system. Because in the 70s, that's when the whole prison for profit system was put into place. And that's when like a lot of these overbearing laws were enacted, just to feed that prison system, just to feed that different face of slavery. And all it is just capitalizing on human lives, and that's the bare bones of it. But anyway, I think I've ranted long enough on this video. This was supposed to be an art video. I hope I didn't ruin it by like talking about like all this just all these this government nonsense and unconstitutional aspects of the judicial system. And I hope you were able to enjoy like the sketches that I made, and if you were able to gain some form of wisdom or some other point of view through like my rants. I think that it's all good on you and good for you and good for me. But I think in the future, if you didn't enjoy my rant, I'll try to maintain like just pure art talk on the art videos and save the political rants for the political rant videos. But anyway, I think I just wanted to talk about a few things to get them off my chest, because like a lot of these issues continue to keep popping up, and it's like these issues that keep continue to just kind of make me feel less of a human. Like I just feel so dehumanized and demoralized, because like man, it's just a matter of fact that like as a registered sex offender, like you do have to live a life as a secondary class citizen, and I do feel like it's very punitive, and that being said, it is unconstitutional, especially since like this form of punishment just doesn't fit my crime, because like all these rules and regulations, like I understand like several of these rules, how they could like be seen as necessary for someone who is um, uh, a serial like rapist or a serial child molester or something. But for someone who just merely downloaded unsavory images of children off the internet, I mean, it's just overblown. And like I know it sounds like I'm minimizing it, and as a matter of fact, I am, and I have to do that because the whole situation has been overblown, and it's just crazy how someone can be imprisoned for several years over a matter of downloaded images, whereas a hands-on child molester or a rapist sees little to no prison time whatsoever. And it's just a really weird state of affairs when that is the case these days. And I feel like I just have to continue voicing my opinion and voicing my concerns in order to make that opinion heard, in order to get things to change, not only for myself but for a lot of people who are stuck in the system. And a lot of these people, like I said before, just don't need to be in the system at all. And quite frankly, like a whole lot of them are just innocent. And it's just very scary that in a lot of these cases, it was like a family photo that was horribly misconstrued by the courts as child pornography, when in fact there was nothing like sexually exploitive or pornographic about the image. They just chose to misconstrue it as child pornography, in a sense, to just like I said, just as prosecutorial coercion, in order to just get another guilty plea, just to continue that trend of just keeping a very high conviction rate. And like I said before earlier in this video, that high conviction rate is in the high 90s, and that in itself is just very suspicious. And like I already broke it down, is that a lot of these convictions are gained through prosecutorial misconduct or prosecutorial coercion, and that's it. And a lot of these Americans and people just don't need to be stuck in the system, but the system itself is crooked and set up against the individuals who have to sit in that defendant's chair, and it's horribly unjustified. But anyway, I think I've ranted enough. That'll be it for this video. In the next video, I'll go over these drawings and just kind of tighten them up as sketches. Right now, they're really rough sketches, and I'll tighten them up into like somewhat, I guess maybe loose sketches or more detailed sketches. and then afterwards I'll go over my process of how I transfer them onto a cardstock, because as you can see right now, this is pretty flimsy copy paper, which I just throw the rough sketches on and just build upon that until it's ready to transfer. But anyway, I'll do that in subsequent videos later on. So if you like this video, go ahead and hit that thumbs up, and go ahead and leave a comment in the video. Just voice your opinion on what you think about my sketches, or what you thought about my rant, or if you want me to do more drawing videos in the future on a specific subject or topic, let me know. And if you want to support more videos of this nature and more artwork from me, then become a Patreon patron, or Patreon patron. I'll leave that link in the description below. Go check out my Patreon page. If you like what you see there, then just go ahead and become a patron. And you'll also get access to patron-only contents in the form of full resolution downloads and actual Photoshop files and other things of that nature. And if Patreon isn't your thing, I also have a GoFundMe account. So if you still want to throw a few bucks my way, I'll leave that link to my GoFundMe account in the description section below. And if you want to get more up to date on what's going on with my life and what had led me to this point, this and that, just check out my autobiographical blog, Johnston Blackhorse, the one and only .blogspot.com. I'll leave all that in the description section below. And if you want to see more artwork, I also have a DeviantArt page, a Furfinity page, and an Ink Bunny page. So mostly I release all my artwork on all these pages. But if you're subscriber or whatever on one of those pages, you can go ahead and follow me on any one of those that I link in the description section below. So anyway, I guess that does it for this video, and I'll hope you enjoyed it, and I'll check you guys later. Sweet.